Hi guys, Kelly Fisher here again. We have a special guest for the anxiety program today. I want you to welcome Dr. John Fitzgerald to the interview today. Dr. John, how are you doing today?
Good, glad to be here, Kelly.
Awesome, thank you so much for joining us. John has a line of superfoods out that he's created to blend with smoothies, and his results of people not only just losing weight, but just getting mentally balanced again. And talk a little bit about your products that help that.
Well, what the products are is a bag of superfoods.
Mm-hmm.
There's 4 different bags. I'll pull one out here. One's called Ancient Chocolate, and you'll see there's about 10 different superfoods in every bag.
Right.
So we have one called Ancient Delight, Ancient Chocolate, Ancient Berry, Ancient Greens. Each one has a different flavor profile, and each one has a different purpose. So it all started years ago when I would have people coming to me and I would try to get them to eat more fruits and vegetables. I failed at it miserably.
Sure.
So I tried juicing, which failed miserably.
Right.
A lot of people don't like the taste, and they hate the cleanup.
They have to clean up.
So,
I was just going to say, you
yeah.
have to get a
So
blender out.
then what I did was I moved to smoothies, and this was in the mid-90s, and then I started finding superfoods to put in those smoothies, and then I took it a step further by saying certain foods are better for certain people to eat based on conditions. So if somebody came to me with high blood pressure, I would want them to eat specific things like beets. So I would have them get beet powder. Usually what I'd do is I'd have people go buy about 20 different bags of superfoods, and it'd be like a science experiment. They'd be a fourth a teaspoon of this, an eighth of this, a half of this. So I did that for a long time. It was hard to do that because the initial buy was about $400,
Right.
and then it was like chemistry lab, a little this, a little that, a little this, in exact measurements. So then I got together with my cousin, who's more of a business guy. I'm the doctor, he's a business guy.
Right.
So we produced 4 different bags that each had 10 different ingredients in it. Then what they can do is they can just put a tablespoon in the smoothie, and I have 65 recipes. They have different flavor profiles, different obvious purposes.
Right.
Things that we talked about while we're on this interview is the ones I had for brain function.
Sure.
Because a lot of stuff in superfoods are very important for the brain. We talk about turmeric. Very important for brain function. There's a lot of research behind this. We know it has to do with Alzheimer's, stopping Alzheimer's disease. We know how it was discovered because they noticed that area of India, there was very low incidence of Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
So then they traced it back to the curry that these people were eating, and then they went farther and traced it back to the turmeric.
Okay.
So we actually use that in 3 of the 4 bags, but it is very good for overall brain function. And there's things such as maca, we got chia seeds, flax seeds, important, cacao, that what they make chocolate out of is one of the big ones for circulation and brain function.
Okay.
So if you can get people these specific things, you can make an effect on what they were doing. One of the original recipes that I came up with was actually called banana bread. And here's what the recipe book looks like. So inside of this, there's 65 different recipes, and this one's called banana bread. So what we would use is, this recipe was initially my first brain recipe. That's what this was. So how do you get people to eat these foods that are super good for the brain on a daily basis? You make smoothies that are unbelievably tasty. So I would put in this bag, in this recipe, either this Ancient Delight mix or this Ancient Chocolate mix. And for instance, this chocolate mix has cacao, flax seeds, chia seeds, beetroot powder, which is really good for nitric oxide, which opens up circulation. We have lucuma, moringa, wheatgrass, turmeric. And the Ancient Delight has chia, flax, reishi, which is a big immune system thing, maca, cinnamon, turmeric, camu, ginger. Lots of things for the brain in both these. So we add the powder, and then we use almond milk. And then notice what we have in here that are really good. Bananas. Bananas contain tryptophan. Very important for the neurochemicals, the actual brain chemicals such as serotonin. So the important thing is, say, get these people to eat these specific foods on a daily basis.
Right.
So then what else I added? Walnuts. Walnuts have the healthiest fat profile for the brain.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are going to be deficient in essential fatty acids.
Right.
How are we going to do that? We're going to do that with walnuts.
Right.
We're also going to do it with the chia seeds and flax seeds that are in the superfood mix.
Right.
You see? And then we flavor it with dates, and then that's all there is to it. Put some ice in there and blend it up. And I did other recipes like this. I have recipes such as banana s'mores.
Right.
Another thing where we'll use a couple different type of nuts, banana, dates, these mix. We also use coconut oil. So a lot of this was taking those ingredients and how do I make a recipe that's really good for brain function.
Right.
You see? So that's how I narrowed it down, and that's an overview of the whole function.
Sure, no, that's amazing. By the way, I had a shot of banana bread the other day. When I was on the radio.
Oh,
I came
okay,
back,
yeah.
And I brought it in. I thought, oh my God, is this delicious?
Yeah.
So basically, like you said, you just simplified it for everybody. Like 10 ingredients. I saw an example on your website how something had like 72 ingredients you were talking about.
Right.
And like you said, you can't send someone to the store and get a science project, a science lab of everything. So you've simplified it into these superfoods, and they just add them to their smoothies.
Right. And they're all non-GMO, USDA organic, vegan, raw, the whole bit. One of the things where people will go buy some of these, you'll hear like greens, some type of greens thing. And
super green.
You know, I don't want to name any product specifically, but typically, I don't even know. Maybe there is one named that. But the thing is they use too little of an amount, and they'll have 70 different ingredients in their product, but there's such a tiny amount in there, and that's called window dressing. Okay. That's when you just sprinkle a little bit in.
Enough to put it on the label.
Enough to put it on the label, but there's really not enough in there to make a difference. Right. That's why when we do it, we have like 10 ingredients. So we have them in dosages that actually make a difference. Right. Not some ridiculous sprinkle thing, and I list 70 things on my package. You know, that's kind of ridiculous. Because if I say, listen, I want to get you a certain amount of beet powder for your blood pressure because beet helps release nitric oxide. Right. When you release nitric oxide, it vasodilates the blood vessels, which causes a decrease in blood pressure. Right. I don't want to sprinkle that in there because that's not enough to make a difference. Right. You have to have enough in there to actually make a difference. Yeah. So that's what's important about it. And when I get people that say, everybody always claims everything's the best. Right. Oh, we're the best, blah, blah, blah. Sure. That's not, obviously that can't be true. Everybody can't be the best. But if you're picking up something with 70 ingredients on it, and if you're not eating, 5 pounds of it with 70 ingredients, you're not taking enough to make a difference of something like beet, which can make a difference in blood pressure. Right. You see? Yeah,
that's amazing. And if working, I know you worked with a lot of. How long did you work with the UFC for? It's just my favorite sport outside of hockey, so I just have to bring it up.
Yeah, well, I did it really heavy between really 2007-ish, somewhere around there, and 2013. Okay. So I would do blood work out of Extreme Couture, Randy Couture's place, and then I was doing it for most of the major fighting gyms around the country. Okay. So there's still rarely a time that fights are on that I don't have several people that have come to me for blood work. And what I do, it can be seen, it's drjohnfitzgerald.com. Sure. I have all the information on there, but I pull blood panels. So a lot of people know me for the athletes because I've seen so many professional athletes, and I'll look at a panel and say, okay, this is off right here. Say your carbon dioxide level is off. That means your body is acidic and those blood vessels cannot carry oxygen properly. Right. So we have to change the buffer system so they can carry, or the size of the red blood cells isn't optimal. This is why. This is how we fix it with nutrition, that type of thing. But that's just a small piece of my patient base. Sure. My patient base is regular people who have problems, whether it's I get a lot of people that come to me for cancer. I don't treat cancer, but they've went through chemotherapy and they were referred to me because they need to get on something to help rebuild their immune system. That's actually where this mix came from, this one called Ancient Delight, because what's in here is high levels of turmeric, reishi mushroom, ginger, cinnamon, and I would build a recipe for you for something that you could use to rebuild your immune system. Right. So that's a popular one. Blood pressure is really common for people to see me. Type 2 diabetes, chronic fatigue, lots of different hormonal things, that type of stuff. So we do it on two ways. So if I pull a blood panel, I'm going to target somebody with supplements. But the most important thing that I can do is target the food that they're eating. Sure. That's where the smoothies come in. So I say, hey, one meal a day, we're going to put as much nutrition in that meal as we possibly can. Right. And then we're going to target it for you specifically. Right. So that's where that comes in. Okay. If somebody does that, we'll make more of a change on them than anything else I've ever seen. Right.
And working with so many normal people it's amazing the work you're doing. How about just when somebody does have, they have some other things they come to you for, but they do have some anxiety, they do have some mental unrest. Where do you see this relieving those type of issues?
That topic is huge, just absolutely huge. Sure. The first thing I'm going to look at, it goes back to what old-time doctors were always taught. Digestion. If you don't fix digestion, you will not fix the patient. Sure. And when it comes down to it, neurochemicals in the brain, all those neurotransmitters, all that stuff is made in your gut. Right. It's not made in your brain. Right. So if your digestion is off, it's going to cause big problems right away. Maybe it comes out of their stomach not digested, like we just had the conversation on the girl who was come down here from the Olympic Training Center that I just saw, and it was a digestion issue that was the problem. Well, it's the same way. We have to look at that first, clear that up, because they may be eating foods that their body's sensitive to. So I'll teach them. We can do blood testing for food allergies and food sensitivities. It costs about $1,000. Right. I can show you how to do it yourself on any food that you want. Yeah. It takes a couple minutes, and you can test yourself on any food. Right. So I normally teach people how to do that, so it's ongoing testing.
Is it muscle testing?
No, it's pulse testing. Pulse testing. Yeah, it's called the Coca Pulse test. Okay. It was developed by an allergist, a board-certified allergist for 40 years. He noticed when you ate certain foods that you had problems with your heart rate raises. Wow. There's a way to test that instantly. Okay. So I do that. So it's very easy. It's just monitoring your pulse once you eat the food. Okay. So we do that. And then we'll do blood tests and we'll make sure all the food's being broke down. You have to look at these things. Sure. Now, let me tell you, this is something that's often overlooked, but very common. We know stress and anxiety go hand in hand. Sure. So if we see someone, if I look at somebody's blood test, and one down and dirty quick way to check the adrenal glands, which would be where the stress output is monitored, is with potassium levels. Okay. So the potassium levels on a blood test, the reference range might be this big. It might be 3.8 to 5. Okay. But what we know the perfect range is 4 to 4.5. Okay. So we know if it's outside of that range, there may be a problem, and there usually is. So what the adrenal glands do is they pump potassium out of the blood and into the cells. Okay, that's a way to look and say, hey, your potassium level should be 4 to 4.5, but it's at 5.0. You probably are burnt out with stress. You probably had a stress response. Right. It's been that way for a long time. Right. Now your adrenal glands are weak. Right. Okay, so because they're no longer pushing that potassium out. So right away we're thinking, okay, weak adrenal glands. What's going to be some of the issues? Number one, anxiety and worrying. Sure. When they would bring the athletes over to peak for the events, a lot of pro fighters sat right here that were burnt out, and we call it losing your swagger. Sure. Because when your adrenal glands get burnt out, you lose your confidence and you start to worry. Yeah. Okay, so when you're worried like that, the chronic response causes a drop in those hormones. Right. all the adrenal hormones that I'm talking about, stress response, anxiety shoots through the roof. So now we got to look, okay, did it start with digestion? Yes, no, maybe. Did it start with just chronic stress response? Right. Adrenal glands were burnt down. What would be the foods that I would use to start fixing that?
Right.
Well, the superfoods that I would use right away. This was what we originally built this mix for.
Ancient chocolate.
Ancient chocolate. Yeah. So it's got things in there to normalize the stress response hormones. We think of maca, however you want to say it, tomato. You know, but I say maca.
Okay.
So if you look at maca and you say, okay, this is an adaptogen. Mm-hmm. So we think of like ginseng's an adaptogen, rhodiola. What it does, it helps your body adapt to stress. Right. But that's a food source.
Right.
It's kind of like a sweet potato that grows at the top of the mountains in Peru that they eat there that helps your body adapt to stress. It's actually not like a sweet potato exactly. That'd be more lucuma. I'm going to say it's from more the radish family.
Okay.
But it's a radish that helps you adapt to stress.
Right.
Okay.
I was going to ask you, I mean, you touched on it, which, I don't know which is important, but I teach the anxiety circle, how the mind gets overloaded, dumps it into the body races, dumps it into the mind. That's what anxiety attack feels like. And I explained this anxiety circle.
Yeah.
From your study, is it important that they started with the anxiety and then it starts with the digestion, or is it?
No, well, I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg type of a scenario, and I think you address both.
Sure.
I don't think you just do one or just do the other as far. So, say we were working with someone.
Right.
You would be working on that mental thought process to change things, because you better do that to somebody.
Yeah.
I would be looking at the physical, saying, okay, this is the damage that is done physically.
Right.
This is what needs to be repaired while you're working on the mental.
Right.
We have to do something to normalize that adrenal gland function. How are we going to do it?
Right.
Is digestion playing a part in it? Yes or no?
Right.
If it's not, then I'm just looking, okay, here's stuff with adrenal gland function, and here's the foods that I need for adrenal hormones and to normalize neurochemicals.
Right.
That's how I look at it. And if I made that brain recipe, I'd be looking at neurotransmitters right there.
Right.
Because I would be helping do things like normalize serotonin levels.
Right.
Just by I'm giving my body the raw materials that it needs to manufacture those.
Right.
And then if I'm adding things like maca, I'm helping my body with the stress response. You know, it's not a thing where their body snaps back in an hour.
Right.
They're on an adrenal gland response. It took a while to get that way.
Right.
Now, what I would have to do with these pro fighters, they would burn their systems down from over exercise, and then mentally they would be whacked.
Yep.
So every bit of language that I used with them was positive, and I was saying things to project to them where they're going to be, to already get their mind going in the right direction. And that is highly important. So then what I'm doing is those particular guys, I would have them eat high levels of cholesterol immediately for the next couple days. They'd basically eat egg yolks and steak.
Wow.
And now this is an emergency situation.
Right.
We got a couple days before their fight. And they may be fighting on a big, for the UFC, on a big stage. Yeah. So we're doing what we can do now. Right. So adrenal hormones are made from cholesterol. So I need cholesterol in their body. Okay. And then I need adrenal glandular, and then I may need pituitary glandular. The pituitary sits right above the roof of your mouth, and it's the master gland that sends messages down to all the other glands to tell them to output stuff. Right. So if those are both burned out, I might use some glandular products and have them eat a lot of cholesterol. Hope it kicks in gear. Right. And a lot of times within 2 days, those guys come back completely mentally changed,
alert, and just ready to. Yeah.
They're no longer self-doubting.
Sure.
They're no longer sitting there worrying.
Right.
Right. If you go farther with the blood work, you can see where this mental aspect has affected their body, and that's very common in regular people.
Right.
See, the UFC fighters, they did it through training.
Sure.
Because you cannot train, 3 hours hardcore every day for 10 weeks and not expect your body to be
I've
burnt
trained
down.
with them.
Okay,
It's amazing.
you know what
it's ridiculous.
So now what the normal person has is they had it the opposite way. The body didn't start it, brain started it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we have the chronic stress mentally. Now that mental starts affecting the rest of their body.
Yes.
So it's reversed.
Right.
So now the mental aspect becomes more important.
Right. For everyday people.
For everyday people, and then we're fixing all the stuff that the mental caused to make everything rounded.
Right.
UFC, these guys physically burnt themselves out, and I'm like, okay, here's how we physically repair you, and then they snap back really quick. The regular people are harder to fix. They take longer because they started it in their head.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's amazing how that works. The reason we're here with Dr. John, guys, I just want to say that in case we're going through the anxiety, in case you're going through the meditations and the videos with me, and something just seems not working, it's not advancing as fast as you want. What's going on with the body is just so important, and just with John's expertise here, knowing that you have to get the body in balance nutritional wise and the mind while you're going through the anxiety program. Talk about the 10 ingredients, how you really simplified those. It seems like obviously a layman would take a lifetime, but it seems like it would take so much study to figure out how the
I'll tell you what I did here. Okay. So I had purposes. If we take the bag that says Ancient Berry, that's a mix designed for circulation.
Okay.
That's what was in there. So I
started the problem first, and then
I retraced it back.
Gotcha.
My number one ingredient is beets. Because if you want to release nitric oxide, you want to give someone beets. That's the number one way. It's not L-arginine, and everybody wants to look at the number one thing is just eating beets, but that's the problem, getting people to do that.
Sure.
So I started there, and then I started adding all the super berries around it, which do two things. They add a lot of benefits, like if you had acai, maquai, camu, there's tons of synergistic benefits by adding those, and they cover up the flavor of the beet.
Okay.
So then the ratio was this. We would do a nitric oxide testing where we take a swab, put it on the tongue, measure nitric oxide levels.
Right.
Then we would take some of the superfood, we'd put it in a smoothie, drink the smoothie, and then retest in 45 minutes to see how much we kicked it up.
Right.
I wanted that response to be golden because what has to happen is I wanted it to be just like the cardiologist tabs because they market these plain beet tabs to cardiologists.
Okay.
And I wanted the smoothie to be as good or better than the tab.
Right.
Which it is.
Right. That's amazing.
So
sure.
I just kept testing it,
Because of
kept
the
playing
synergistic
around.
effects and,
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
And it gives you a variety to make a huge amount of recipes. So I can say, hey, you know what? Here's 15 recipes that you can take for blood pressure.
Right.
And you can just pick any of those,
Right.
and they're all going to have that beneficial. You can do a different one every day. It allows that person to continually have variety in their life. Because, if you tell someone, eat the same thing every day, like a fitness person would do, they might do it for a while.
Right.
That's no long-term solution.
Right. Unless you're crazy like me, I eat the same thing every day. People are like, how do you do that? I'm like, I like my life simple, but everyday person isn't going to do that.
Isn't going to do it.
So
for
the
most
recipe
part.
book, you take the superfood packets and you say you have different recipes for like each packet. So
I get about 15 different recipes for each. Actually, more than that. And then we have healthy frappuccino recipes. So they're recipes with coffee.
I got excited when I read that.
I have those a lot.
I need
and
that.
by the way, on certain types of brain function, very important. Coffee is highly beneficial.
Right.
On others, it might not be the best method to go after. It just depends on what they have going on.
Right.
So I just go after it with the food. It's like, here's a bunch of recipes. These ingredients are in there. This immune system mix, this is immune system and inflammation mix, this Ancient Delight.
That's huge,
now, what I did was, I used to say this when somebody comes see me before these packs.
Right.
Here's a list of all of the top foods that we can have you eat to rebuild your immune system.
Right.
It just happens that I took the top ones and I could get them in powdered form, and all they are is dehydrated and ground into powder, so they're still alive.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
In that
I was going to
raw
say, I was
state.
going to ask you to bring up the powder because when I was reading on your website, I thought, wow, that makes so much sense. And the pesticides also that can turn into powder.
See, this is a thing when everybody says, "Oh, our this superfood or this green mix is the best."
Right.
If that is condensed, so if it has pesticides in it, they're condensed pesticides you're taking. That's why ours are USDA organic.
Right.
We didn't want that in ours.
Right.
And pesticides are horrible for the brain.
Right.
Like aspartame.
Right.
It's what you want to stay away from. Or
Right.
MSG.
Right.
Some excitatory thing for your brain. People overlook these little details that you need to have set in place. So if it's not USDA organic or non-GMO, I ignore it right away. It's not.
And people should know those are legal terms. I mean, there's so many terms on the market like natural, and that words that don't mean anything. They have no legal standing behind it at all. So,
you have to meet criteria. It's a like USDA organic. That's a government regulated thing. You know? So sometimes people just put organic on there. That's not USDA organic. That's a huge difference between having something that says organic and USDA organic.
So they can use the term organic
Yes, and I can't remember the ratios off the top of my head, but it just has to be a certain percentage organic.
Of course.
It's not like USDA organic.
Right.
It's such a play on words with this
labeling, and it's so confusing out there for people.
Yeah. So I even had a conversation with somebody that made up their own term for it all, and it's like, well, our term's better than everybody else. I said, who regulates it? And he said, I do.
Right.
Oh, so you made up your own certification and you regulate it yourself. Yeah. Why didn't I think of that? That would have been a lot cheaper.
I'm a great marketer.
I wouldn't have to deal with the government or anything. That would be so much easier.
Your own brand, your own,
crazy.
Yeah, I just want to mention that, you guys are going through the anxiety. The foods are so important. I urge you guys to go to Dr. John's website. It's My Nutrition Advisor.
Correct.
MyNutritionAdvisor.com to get these foods. And like some of you people might be thinking, like we were talking about, like the powder form, it's like, well, shouldn't I be eating regular food all the time? And yes and no. I mean, of course you should have a regular food diet.
Some of this is expensive to get on Whole Foods. And if you go to the, before I forget, if you go to the website, MyNutritionAdvisor.com, you can click on free recipes and there's a filter. And you can click brain. And it'll list all the recipes with the most foods in it that benefit the brain.
Right.
So when you dehydrate something down, it might be on it's a ratio, and everything's different. Let me give you an example: wheatgrass. Okay, so if you dehydrate wheatgrass, it's 30-1.
Right.
That's the ratio. So 1 cup of powder equals 30 cups of fresh.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
So some of these things are hard to buy fresh, and they're really expensive to buy fresh.
And you're doing 30 shots instead.
And so when you dehydrate them down, you're getting all that nutrition, and it's actually a lot cheaper on your budget.
Sure.
Especially when you start looking at some of these super berries and things like that. It's very hard to get McQuay berries fresh,
right?
Or moringa or something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you listed some things on here. People go, "What was that word?" I don't know.
Yeah, everything's in there for a specific, a specific purpose. What I did was in that Ancient Delight mix, I chose things that are really beneficial for the immune system and inflammation. Right. That's the whole process that we were looking at.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's amazing. The immune system and inflammation. I mean, just powerful stuff. So, you guys, I really want you to really think about the nutritional side of things while you're going through these meditations, understanding what anxiety is and where it comes from. Like I said, the mind and body circle, that anxiety circle will break in. When we get to the body part, I want to bring a professional on like Dr. John to let you guys know how important it is to get your body in balance, because it is a circle that we have to break, and we just can't break it with the mind sometimes. It's not powerful enough.
It allows you to fix if I kind of make it like this, okay? If I'm building a house and I don't have all the raw materials there, I'm not going to complete that house.
Right.
And when it comes to brain chemicals, a lot of times people do not have all the raw materials in place to build what they need. Their body's wanting to build it, but what if they don't have enough to, to build the serotonin? What if they're deficient in tryptophan, or what if they're deficient in L-tyrosine or magnesium, zinc, some of these things that are really important. When you start doing blood testing, there's massive amounts of deficiencies that people have, and if you fix them, everything that you do mentally is going to be more effective, because now it allows, because if your brain is we both know that's where the money's at, on changing everything. But if you have a bunch of deficiencies, you're chopping yourself off because you don't have what you need to build those brain chemicals in the first place. So it does go hand in hand.
You just don't understand sometimes, if you do the meditations and you don't feel better. You don't feel like where you should be in the game. You know what I mean? That's how important it is to get the body back in balance.
And I've done a lot of blood work for some of the top hypnotists and hypnotherapy, and they're always amazed at what comes back, because it is an important part of it. And where people kind of go wrong is the trial and error. There's some things that you can say, oh, I'm going to take some phosphatidylserine because that's good with brain function, but you might not need phosphatidylserine. You might need something else that's glaringly obvious, and it's tough when you just start guessing, because there's so much stuff out there. We know there's certain foods you want to have. We know you want maca. We know coconut oil makes a difference right away. We know banana makes a difference right away. We know walnuts. So those are what you want in the diets. And then we do the blood testing to look for specific that we can fix, to pinpoint it. Food's most important when I look at nutrition. And then second would be pinpointing where the deficiency lies.
Yeah, so when you give people the superfoods, like you said, when you tested it out right away, do you do any testing where they come in, well, obviously like the fighters on a different level, but everyday people where it's like, they had anxiety, they're stressed, and you did the blood test, you know what they needed, and then noticeably different, they came back just mentally clear and alert? I mean, you notice that a lot.
Right away. And I also, there's reflexes you can do. I can shine a light in your eye right now, watch your pupil response. There's a bunch of checks you can do. That's another indicator of adrenal gland function as it changes. There's objective testing you can do for this. So you're not just shooting in the dark.
How does that make you feel?
Is it improving or is it not improving? So I've seen people with big patches of hair gone. I've seen major fighters under massive amounts of stress, and they'll lose a patch of hair. And we take it and we look, and it's like, wow, mentally you are off, and it stems from adrenal gland function because your stress response is off. So here's why. Here's what the test shows. Let's retest you, and it varies. Usually about 8 weeks or so, we'll retest and we'll see the change. And they may be 20% corrected or 100% corrected. I don't know. It just depends on how long it's been there and how fast their body's changing. The more that we do and the more accurate we pinpoint it, and addressing the foods, major game changer.
That's one thing I want to bring up also, because I was on Dr. John's website over the weekend, and how fast this, you just said 6 to 8 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, did you just say? I was on the website watching the guy who was printing your manuals, the interview with him.
With the blood pressure.
I thought he was going to say at least 7-8 months. And then he goes 6 to 8 weeks. It changed completely. I thought that's like a miracle. Time-wise.
With his blood pressure.
It's just how short a
distance.
That's
a big deal about putting the right foods in and adding specific superfoods. And we're not going against anything any doctor is saying. Every doctor wants their patient to eat more fruits and vegetables. Everybody does. I've never met one that did it. The only thing we're saying is, you know what? Let's take this one step further. Instead of just a blanket statement, eat more fruits and vegetables, let's say this. These are the fruits and vegetables we want you to eat more of. This list. Here's a recipe. Here's recipes with all those in there. We've made it easy. That's why this is becoming so popular with doctors. It takes the work out. Because it took me years to put this together. It wasn't an overnight thing here.
What about superfood? The term, like we were talking about organic, is that a generic blanket also for it right now?
Superfood doesn't have a definitive definition. Yeah,
Okay.
everybody uses it differently.
Right.
I use it to say certain foods have more of specific
Right, like the
nutrients in them.
orange you were talking
I
about,
give an
vitamins.
example of an orange. I say, okay, oranges. If you take 1 cup of oranges, that has roughly 80 grams of vitamin C.
Right.
But if you look at 1 cup of acerola cherries, that has 1,600 milligrams of vitamin C. So 80 compared to 1,600.
Yeah, huge difference.
So acerola cherries are considered a superfood.
Right.
And those are in the mix.
Right.
And then there's other superfoods where it's not so much about a vitamin or a mineral, it's more about the effects, like maca, normalizing stress response,
Sure.
hormones, turmeric, brain function, inflammation, anti-cancer, that type of stuff.
Right.
So we'll see where that all plays out. A lot of people just kind of use that term very, very loosely for marketing.
Yeah.
And then where people don't take into consideration how you can help the person the most by giving them specific ones. That's a big differentiating factor, where if you really want to make a difference, you tell the person, you don't use the shotgun approach, you use the sniper rifle approach.
Nice.
Saying, here's a list of 10 foods. These are the ones that are probably you should be doing.
Right. Well, that's what your recipe book does, the sniper effect. I was just thinking, if you walked into a Whole Foods market with some of this information, you'd be lost. You'd be zoned out. You know what I mean? It's a shotgun effect. Like, oh my God, this is that says super, that says green, that says organic. You wouldn't.
Which one should I do?
Right. Yeah.
Well, they're great to rotate them and all, but if you have something for your brain and you have anxiety, you know what? There's certain ones that are gonna be for you.
Right.
Here they are.
Right.
Here's the recipes.
Right.
Do those.
Yeah.
I even have one called Happy Brain, a recipe, another one called Happy Mood. There's things in there specifically. I do those on a regular basis. Not only I like the effect of feeding my brain, I kind of rotate through, but I also really like the flavor of those.
Happy, you hear that, guys? Happy Brain. What was the other one?
Happy Mood.
Happy Mood. You guys got to get these.
Yeah, they are definite brain recipes.
Yeah.
So people say, well, what do you do on your patients? I put it on mynutritionadvisor.com.
Right.
Those are the recipes I use right there. They're up there. And then what else do? I do blood testing. And then that's how I pick supplements. I don't just randomly choose those.
Sure. Yeah. And like you said, there's like we talked about someone coming in the office, and did they have a reduction in stress or anxiety? And you said there's physical tests you can do. I mean, short of obviously any brain testing, it's just how the body's reacting.
Yeah, we'll test things like adrenal gland function and things like that, because that's that is responsible for the stress response. Right. And that has to be, if it's operating perfectly, we know things are changing right there. And then there's reflexes you can do. Right. I have that in the second, actually I have a whole chapter in my second book called Nutrition Hacks, The Truth, about adrenal gland function and stress response, the checks you can do for it.
Is your other books, are they
they're on they're on Amazon, they're on mynutritionadvisor.com. Right. But one's called Fat Loss, The Truth. Right. And it's strictly a fat loss book, and the other one's called Nutrition Hacks, The Truth. Okay. So
Nutrition Hacks kind of gives people an idea of what not to look for when they walk in a Whole Foods.
Well, it's got a lot of that stuff. It's got specific tests. It's got adrenal gland stuff, thyroid gland stuff. I was writing a lot of information, and this stuff didn't fit in Fat Loss, The Truth. Okay. So it's all kinds of different things that people want. So I put it in that book. Right. I get a lot of comments. There's a big section on protein, how much you need, what's the research show. There's, like you say, that section on adrenal glands, very popular. I get a lot of comments like, I had no idea that you could check this stuff by this. And I'm like, yeah, this is how you do it. This is the doctor's checks for it. Here's how you do it.
Right. Yeah. You do it on your own.
Yeah. Make it simple.
That's cool. Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. Guys, you're working on the anxiety. You're doing the meditations over and over again, twice a day, getting your mind back in balance. Now you have a lot more information about how to get your body in balance. And I've been working with Dr. John myself. Me and my wife are going on his programs, and we're just changing everything up. It's every tool you have to rebalance yourself is amazing. And if you go to mynutritionadvisor.com, and you guys get the books, get the Superfoods. We might have a little coupon for discounts for you guys that are on the anxiety program.
You can put a link on there.
Sure, we'll put a link down on the bottom for you guys. A little discount. But go get yourself back in balance, guys. Keep doing the meditations every day. Hook up with Dr. John Superfoods. His research, I was on his website for like 6 hours. It was amazing, just the information coming in. And I'm a physical trainer. I've been doing this my whole life, and the information I pulled in was incredible. So I'd like to thank Dr. John for being with us today.
All right, it was fun.
Very
Anytime.
Good. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Namaste.